Hey guys, so I'm surrounded by my tomatoes today because I wanted to talk to you about a couple of different ways that you can plant them up and get a really great harvest from your tomato plants. The last time we checked in on tomatoes, I had grown from seed some tomatoes that started out about like this. We potted them up looking like this into 140 ml pots, and over the last couple of weeks they've turned into plants that look like this. Now these are now ready to get planted out into their final growing position. Their final growing position could be another big pot, or it could be the ground, could be a raised bed, really anywhere that you want them growing. The key is that they need full sun. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to show you a couple of different ways that you can plant them up. Now I'm only going to be planting in pots because I don't have my raised bed set up yet. But that's alright because it gives you a couple of great ideas, and what I'm doing can easily be translated into raised garden beds or the ground itself. The first thing I want to do though is prove a point to you, and that's what I said last time about how deep we have to grow the tomatoes. Last time we looked at tomato plants, I stated that you needed to plant them deep so that these little white fine bits would turn into nice strong roots. Now you can see I've got a nice strong stem here, and that's part of what we did. But I want to show you how those roots have developed. I've taken our tomato out of the pot, and I'll just pull some of this soil away so that you can see those roots developing. Ha-ha! So you see here, each of these little roots coming out of the stem, each of them are coming from this silver part. And it's a really nice looking root system. Now obviously this one has been a little bit stressed, so I'll take extra careful care of it, but the others are all going to look the same, nice strong root system. We're going to make sure when we plant it, we take these little suckers off and plant it again nice and deep, because the deeper we plant it, the stronger our stem's going to grow and the better tomatoes we're going to produce. The first tomato I'm planting up is a tiny tom. This is a red cherry tomato and has been bred purposely for pots and small spaces. This tomato doesn't need staking, so I'm actually going to try something new and plant it in a hanging basket. My hope is that the tomatoes will hang down and droop over the side, making a really beautiful show from the basket. Before I even get ready to plant, I'm just going to look at this and take out these small side shoots at the bottom. This will help me to plant it and also help to give the tomato a nice strong stem. So about like this. I'll fill up my basket now with a really good quality potting mix. I forgot my slow release fertilizer, so I just had to get that. I'll put a small handful of this in here, mix it in lightly, just making sure that I keep my hangers out of the way. Got it about half full. I'm now going to take my tomato plant and I'm going to look for any side shoots, because the side shoots here aren't going to produce such strong tomatoes. In this case though, if I've got a nice strong one, that's okay, because I'd like it to branch down. A small weak one like this just here, I'll pop off. See, we've got a nice strong root system, but because we're planting it in quite a shallow basket, I will just stretch that open. So we've got here a tiny tom red cherry tomato in a hanging basket. Hopefully it will droop. This is the first time I've planted a tomato in a hanging basket, so I'll water it in, get her hung up, and we'll see how she produces over the course of the season. The next way of planting tomatoes is the quite traditional way, and that is to use a stake. So I'm going to use one of my Rue de Marmande tomatoes, and the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to look at every little individual shoot. Now these are a determinate tomato, an indeterminate tomato, which means these are going to keep growing as tall as I allow them to. They'll probably top up at about 1.5 to 2 meters, and they need constant staking, otherwise they will fall over. Now, because I want to get, again, a nice strong stem, I'm taking off all of the side shoots right up quite high. I'm also pinching out the little suckers that are in the middle of every branch, because again, they will take energy away from the main tomato, and those little suckers don't produce good flowers. We want good flowers because good flowers produce good tomatoes. All right, now that we've got that trimmed up, get some good quality potting mix into our pot. We'll mix in some slow release fertilizer, and we'll get our tomato out of the pot. Now remember, we want it sitting quite deep so that we get nice strong roots. We pat the soil down to make sure that there's no air pocket and a nice tight mixture. The next thing to do is we add our stake. So you find a good spot on the tomato, somewhere that seems natural, and plant it in as close to the stem as we can. Nice and deep, as far down as it will go, camp it in. We then have to start training our tomatoes and tying it onto the stake. So I have some plant tie here. It's a nice, loose, easy kind of material. You just take a small part, get a small bit of the stem and tie it on. You don't want to tie it too tight because that could hurt the tomato. Loose enough that it has a little bit of movement, but tight enough that it will start training up the stake. We water this in now and see how it grows. The key is you have to keep training it to the stake. This is one of the reasons why most people have started to turn towards the caging method, which is what I'll show you next. The final method for growing tomatoes that I'm going to show you today is caging. Now with caging, we get our pot or sink a cage nicely into your ground or your raised bed. And I've made a cage here. Now this is just with simple square wire that I've got from my hardware store. I've cut it and tied it together. I'm going to position this in the bottom of the pot before I put my first round of soil in. If you're doing this in a garden bed, you probably want to dig a hole to get this in the ground first. It is a little bit harder to fill it up with soil, but I promise you it's worth it in the end. A small handful of slow release fertilizer which we'll mix in, and we'll get another tomato. I'm going to use another Rouge de Marmande because these are best for caging. I can cage the cherry tomatoes, and I will do some of those as well. Pinching off all of the bottom shoots and all of the suckers. Again, I want a nice strong stem. Now it is hard to take that much foliage off, I know, but I promise you it's worth it. Ah! I broke this one. That's not good. This one is now doomed. That's the end. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I always feel so bad when I do that. So we'll try this one and I'll be a little bit more gentle. All right, that looks better. Now, just being very gently, we'll stake it through the cage. When caging in a pot, you just want to make sure that as much of the cage is covered and patted down really strongly with the potting mix. And that will help it to stop from lifting up and falling out during the season. As the tomato plant grows, the roots will also start to hold it in place. So we have our tomato caged neatly. Doesn't really matter if it's on a bit of a lean. But the great thing with this method is that the tomato will continue to grow upright. It will grow upright because it can't fall over because of the support from the cage. All I have to do with this one is come through and pinch out those little suckers every couple of days as they develop. A lot less work though than staking the tomatoes. I'll water this in, we'll see what we've got. So just a quick recap, guys. I have two different varieties of tomatoes here. I have a Rouge de Marmande, which is a beefsteak tomato, indeterminate, which means it's going to keep growing up until I tell it not to. And I've got a Tiny Tom, a nice red cherry tomato, which is a determinate or bush type tomato, which doesn't need any staking and is purposely designed to be grown in pots. I've planted the Tiny Tom in the hanging basket with the hope that it will trail down these beautiful red tomatoes. I've got a Rouge de Marmande on the staking method. And with this, I have to remember to stake it and to tie it to the stake every couple of weeks as it grows, probably every 10 to 15 centimeters. I have to keep coming and pinching out those little side suckers. Using the caging method, I don't have to do any tying, which is really great because that can get a little bit tiresome. All I have to do with the caging method is pinch out the little suckers as they appear so that we get a nice, thick, strong, straight stem in the middle and allow these beautiful little flowers that are showing here to produce some really great tomatoes. In all of the pots, I've used a really good high quality potting mix. I've used a slow release fertilizer to give the tomatoes some extra oomph, and I will make sure that I also put these on a weekly fertilizing schedule, and for that I'll use my Power Feed by Seasoil, which is a seaweed based fertilizer. Other than that, it's time to put them in a really good spot. As I said, full sun, 6 to 8 hours a day, let them grow, and I will be eating tomatoes in no time. I'm so excited. Look at how many more I've got to go. Anyway, that's 3 different ways of planting out some tomatoes, and I really look forward to showing you updates throughout the season. Bye guys.